introduce tonight's guest speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Adrian Orchard OBE.
Now, I was promised, almost a lest we forget, is the part that the Harrier played in Afghanistan, and in particular 800 Naval Air Squadron, which was my squadron, when we stood up and took the aircraft out there. In a minute. The bit that we'll sort of look at today about Joint Force Harrier as it used to be, and we can say this now because it's consigned to history. So this question is which one's the Air Force guy and which one's the Navy guy. But I'll leave you to work that one out. More to go into the background really to Afghanistan, which was odd because we hadn't really dealt with that kind of conflict before. If you told me when I arrived here in Yeovilton as a baby Sea Harrier pilot that my squadron command would be flying a mud-moving ground attack aeroplane that used to be an Air Force aircraft, landlocked in a campaign in sort of near Asia, I would have clearly laughed heartily and said, where's the carrier, I need to get back to sea. But nonetheless, part of the Fleet Air Arm business, of course, is to just adapt and get on with it, and that's exactly what we had to do. It was also one of the first conflicts that the engineers had been in the same location as the weapons landing. In the first 20 minutes, as we were stepping off the Hercules from Kabul, the first batch of rockets arrived, literally just on the other side of the hard standing, which was a bit of a wake-up call for the engineers, because this is an aeroplane sat in what was a very traditional setup, which is an aircraft on ground alert. What did we have? We had 8 aeroplanes on the detachment at any one time, around about 75 engineers. If you look at that figure, actually that's a very lean engineering footprint for an aircraft. We flew 240 to 480 hours a month, which equated basically to 3, we always flew in pairs, so 3 pairs of aircraft each day, and then throughout the daylight hours we would always have a pair of aircraft configured like that, so you would leave all your kit all set up, hanging on the aeroplane, so that if you got the call, it was nominal 30-minute alert, but we were always airborne in about 11 or 12 minutes from the call, as we went speeding down the carry track, being chased by American policemen who clearly had got a misunderstanding of what we were doing and felt it far more important to disobey the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit than it was for me to get airborne and actually go out and do my job. That was a very traditional scene. First thing in the morning, sunrise, it was always quite calm. Generally speaking, the rockets had happened at night or just at dusk, because that was traditionally when they would shoot them from the local village. Because it was getting dark, it was much more difficult to find them, so they would shoot, run, and disappear quietly into their shacks for the night. Bottom right-hand corner, the ubiquitous international container. It is fascinating what you can use an international container for. Obviously the use there is to hide, embarrassingly, the C-130 that had arrived at the airfield. But we used international containers as barriers, so they were blast barriers so that the C-130s could sneak into those. Obviously they were used as immense storage containers, which is fantastic. Also, what used to arrive, you would have a shop in a box. So, for example, there's a Canadian coffee shop called Timmy Hortons. And Timmy Hortons arrived in the back of an international container. They opened the doors, they bolted them back, they plugged it in, added water, ta-da, coffee shop. Actually, the bottom left-hand corner, fairly obviously, is not a very, very large unmanned air vehicle. Obviously, the Harrier is a bit further away. The primary aims of us being there were to support the troops, and the way we did that was via close air support and then reconnaissance to help them go out and do their business. The top right-hand corner, this is the sort of old-school setup that we used to have in the beginning. Free-flight rockets, very high-speed free-flight rockets. They were highly effective and pretty much straight-line weapons, so they were very accurate. Bottom right-hand corner was a Maverick, which really wasn't optimized for that environment. But it was in the beginning, it was the only weapon that we had to go against targets that were moving in any sensible form. And then again, the veritable 540-pound free-fall bomb on the left-hand side, and then slightly more upmarket, but not much, was the laser-guided bomb, and on top of the kit is a little GPS antenna. So that was an updated version of the laser-guided bomb. It was a weapon that really changed everything for us. It doesn't look too dissimilar to those laser-guided bombs, because in many ways it's not. This was called the Paveway 4. For us, this changed everything. So this was the sniper targeting pod that was on the belly of the aircraft. Very, very, very capable electro-optic, infrared and visual targeting pod, which was totally slewed to our weapon system. Look at the TV screen, slew it accurately, and then now you could see what you could see out the window. But more importantly, you knew that because a little head-up display box appeared. Very difficult to picture what I'm saying, but ultimately you had very, very high confidence that what you were seeing on the ground was now what you were seeing on the TV screen. So I would look out the window and I'd be looking at this thing hitting the ground, and I would simply slew this pulsing light over the point of interest on the ground, let go, it would now be tracking. I'd look in at my TV screen and to actually see what it was in infrared, or more importantly, one of the controllers on the ground might also have one of these handheld flashing lights, laser lights, and he would be pointing at the target that he wanted me to do something with. Okay, reconnaissance, you can see it's a reconnaissance pod because there's a big arrow pointing at it. I thought one day I'll actually remove that, but I quite like the fact that it points at it. So the reconnaissance pod, again, it's right next to the sniper pod. So just up the screen from where you are, you'll see a cigar-shaped dark object. That's the sniper pod. And then on the centre line is the actual reconnaissance pod. So that aircraft is, that's one of the dumb aeroplanes, if you like. So as you work your way from the bottom, you've got a 540-pound bomb, a rocket pod with the frangible head on it, a fuel tank. Every kid at air shows thinks that's just a massive bomb, and of course the answer is yes, it is a really, really big bomb. You've got one of the strakes, don't worry about that, the pod, the sniper, and then the same thing going to the north. But the reconnaissance pod was brilliant, because we used to go out and do specific reconnaissance missions, and we would come back with exceptionally high quality image. And this is just a generic picture just to show you the kinds of things that would be produced in a very short period of time. But the product was really important because when we had a specific target of interest, we needed to go and see specific points that allowed the guys on the ground to actually get into a compound accurately and with as minimum plus as possible. So we'll do a little bit of an exercise now. You mentioned about the workload, which was good because it was quite busy. So if you were flying above this particular area, and I'm working with a forward air controller, somebody on the ground who wants to try and get my eyes onto a target. Most of the time, unless he can give me a GPS coordinate, he's talking me onto the target. So as I'm approaching the area, maybe 30 or 40 miles away, he starts to build my picture for me. So he might say to me something like, let's just assume that north is up on this picture, by the way. So he might say to me something like, you know, your target area is going to have a north-south main supply route. A main supply route, for most of us, is a road. But it is the main supply route because that's what the army called them. So a main supply route it is. So you'll see a north-south main supply route splitting a small village. So I've already got in my mind, I can see a road and it's going to be a village either side. So it's my job now to tell him that I can see that. So I go, okay, contact. And he goes, okay, in the north-south main supply route, your target is on the western side. So we already know it's on the left-hand side of that screen. So I'm already getting more of a picture. So I'm narrowing it down. So as we work our way up, I then might say, as I go up through the village, on the right-hand side, I can see some compounds with what look like vegetation or some trees or bushes growing in them. And he might start to try and describe things back to me as well. From Afghanistan to a specific location quite quickly, but you would still be batting backwards and forwards to make sure that you knew exactly where this point was. And you always knew it was going to be a tough day when you got Sarajevo, because Sarajevo was the French. So the French are fine, they're great, they're good people, great food, good wine. Really difficult on the radio. So when you got there, and language barriers sometimes, depending on which agency you're working with, Vampire 2122, And he goes, good afternoon, I'm about to do, and here we go, it's just going to go horribly downhill from here. So you would start the talk on, and he would say, are you ready for your toucan? Yes, I'm ready for the toucan. So on we would go, and he would say things like, can you see the large town of Sarajevo? Yes, I can see the large town of Sarajevo. And it was the same one every time. And we even knew where the target was. Because it was the same burnt out old APC, but it was always a different way of getting there, which was always fascinating. The French always took a different route every time. Unfortunately, one day he did catch me out, because he said, we are going to do a different target today. Oh no, this is a nightmare. He says, can you see the Yonkelator? Yonkelator. What on? And so, you know, across a mile across from each other, a pair of sea harriers going around in circles over the top of Yugoslavia, going, "What's a Yonkelator?" And we're on the back radio, which is a terrible radio down between our legs. We go, "Okay, what is he talking about?" And we try and repeat it back, and eventually we realise that what he's saying is a road shaped like a Yankee letter. Oh, a Yonky letter. Yes. So it's all about the language barrier, unfortunately. Unmanned air vehicles. I can't even believe that I'm talking about them because they're a scourge. They were right next to us, so where our hard standing was, they were next to us. And they basically have a ground controller that sits in a cabin, looks out through the little optic and drives it out like a model aircraft, really, which I suppose is what they are. They're just very, very dangerous model aeroplanes. And off you would go, and what you would do for aviators, if you were coming out of your hard standing and an aircraft was going, you'd stop and you'd sort of wave at them, and off you would go. And likewise, when you were coming back in, aircraft would obviously stop for you so that you could get past, because they knew you were trying to get past. I've waved at one of these before. So I came off the runway, you know, the brakes are warm, so I need to get back, and literally, you can see it's come out and it's stopped, and you can see it do its little, you know, nod as it stops. And as I went past, I went, what have I just done? What have I just done? And the thing is, I even had this image of the guy in the cabin waving at me. Bloody things. But I come back to my starting point, which is actually, Afghanistan is, from the air, a staggeringly beautiful place. So let's shift targets a little bit now. Oh, there you go. So straight back to reality. Culdrose. I had never worked at Culdrose. We'd never been down there before other than either on holiday or to pop in and to poke fun at the pingers that are down there. Of course, these veritable beasts go out of service nominally at the end of the year, but we will keep flying them until the end of March because there has to be a fold-over period just in case Bristows mess it up. Hopefully they won't. But we are, along with Gannet, the last military search and rescue helicopters in the UK. It's going to be an exceptionally sad day. I did not quite imagine the emotion that I would constantly get from the Cornish. As far as the Cornish are concerned, they are not Navy aeroplanes, they are Cornish aeroplanes. 2 aircraft carriers about to hit the streets, and as probably has always been the case reluctantly, Culdrose is at the heart of it. It's been a little while since we've put large numbers of helicopters at sea. This was last year on exercise Deep Blue. Nonetheless, it was a very successful exercise. Lots of people made a big fuss about it. It was 9 helicopters operating from a CDS. Many people in here will go, 9 helicopters operating from a CDS, that sounds like a standard weekend. But you have to remember that we have spent the last decade plus doing landlocked campaigns. Of course, the world is changing rapidly. It's been even longer since we've done that, of course. Tear in my eye. But nonetheless, we will get back there quite quickly. We've got we have around about 30 naval aviators at any one stage flying over in the US. So there she is. That's her just as she's come out of the dock and being shoved alongside. So that's where we need to get to. We need to get to an aircraft carrier full of aeroplanes. Of interest, and obviously that's an honest impression, of interest, the US Marine Corps are highly likely that whenever we deploy the aircraft carrier on operations, they are likely to have 12 aeroplanes of their own on board. I can absolutely guarantee no politician thinks that this aircraft carrier is going to go to sea with nothing on it. A little bit of legacy, obviously that's today. Still going to be running these on till the end of 2018. So veritable seeking will still be defying the laws of gravity and beating the air to death for at least 3 more years yet. Of course, that's where our legacy is currently resting within the fixed-wing fleet. You'll see them routinely. In fact, I think they were here this week at Yeovilton, but they're based down with us at 736. So this is what our guys are doing at the moment out on the various carriers in various parts of the world. You may have remembered a few months back they talked about the shock and horror that British pilots, RAF pilots, and in this case they can take the credit for that, RAF pilots are bombing Iraq and bombing, well, we've always done that, as in we've always been on exchange, we've always done this, it's happened forever. Every single one of them was a Navy pilot, of course. So what I'll do is I will finish on that photo maybe, so I think that's a lovely photo. What have we got? We have got 2 new aircraft carriers, F-35Bs that will spend a lot of their time at sea, Merlin Mark II, which everybody wants. If we had 100, we probably wouldn't have enough. We have Green Merlin back here, as you well know, because they're happily back here, firmly ensconced here in Yeovilton. Wildcats, even there they're a bit small and a bit low on range. So we're in a really, really good place. And 2 new aircraft carriers that I think for many people in the Royal Navy are still a bit of a shock. They don't quite know what's going to happen when in the morning as they're slowly waking up over their coffee in Fareham and Gosport, that the sun will be slightly eclipsed by this large creature that will be sat there waiting to go to sea, and then shortly after there'll be another one. We're in for a fascinating ride, and we've got a lot of work to do to get this thing done. There you go. So that is my final slide. We've cantered through quite a lot there. I deliberately wanted to talk about Afghanistan because it's a thing that I suppose I've invested quite a lot of our time in it. Something that I want to make sure that sort of stays in the near memory. Partly because I do think that 2010 will become a piece of history that eventually will be discussed quite markedly. But all the action's really happening down where we are downstairs. So with that, I shall leave that rather nice picture up there, and then we'll do questions afterwards.
Let's go on TV.